Martin, thank you for joining us on the Channels Book Club.
Thank you, Kule, for having me.
It's a pleasure having you here. You know, you were one of our first guests on the Channels Book Club, and I noticed you've been busy since then.
Yes.
How to Read More. Fantastic work. One of the best I've read in a long time.
Thank you very much.
Well
Happy
done.
to hear that.
Well done. Good work. The first thing that catches your attention when you pick up this book, whoever, is reading more. Is there a need for that in Nigeria? For you to have written this, how to read more? It raises that question. Is there the need to read more in Nigeria? And how serious is that need?
Absolutely. I mean, there's absolutely a need, to read more because there's a value to reading that most people are not aware of. But this is not just a Nigerian problem. It's almost like a global problem. People are realizing that compared to before now, people used to read a lot more than what we're having these days. There are so many reasons, responsible. But for Nigeria specifically, I think the reading culture is abysmally low.
It sounds like a relief in my ears. Are you saying Nigeria doesn't have a peculiar reading challenge? It's a global challenge, so we're not supposed to be too worried, are we?
No, we should, because even though is a problem generally, when you come to Nigeria, it is even more so.
It's a bigger problem in Nigeria.
It's a major issue, major problem in Nigeria, and you see the ramification of that, in the WAEC performances, in just across everywhere. You listen to people speak, the way they speak, the way they analyze issues, it's just lack of depth. There's no structure to what they are saying, and when you talk to people, when you listen to people who read, you see the evidence in the way they speak, their confidence level, the way they look at issues, and also the way they write.
Okay, that takes me to something you wrote in here about you graduated with a first-class degree, and then after you left school, there was a 10-year period you didn't pick up one book to read. And you spoke about how that impacted on your life, and then how you suddenly realized the importance of reading, and then you started reading again, and your life changed. Can you share a bit of that? Because I found that very interesting.
Yes, you're right. And that's the problem, because, just like so many of us, I erroneously associated reading with school. Okay, and that was my problem. I'm sure many people have that problem. So you are in school, you are doing intense study, where you read for hours at a stretch. Okay, now that's what you do in school. Well, as I say in this book, when you leave school, you're supposed to read. And so there's a way you read that you find pleasurable and you enjoy. Now, to come back to that story, yes, for about 10 years, I was working in a bank, and my thinking was that I'm working, so I'm not reading, okay? And for 10 years, I didn't read until I changed career, and I went to work for a top management consulting firm. And the first thing that happened to me on the very first day I resumed, I was given a book to read, and that book was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Stephen Covey,
excuse me. It completely changed my life, because it just opened up the floodgates. And what I also noticed in that environment was that I was seeing people who spoke very well, seeing people who were very, very articulate, who wore their confidence on their sleeves, client listened. I was looking at these people. What makes these people different? And I later found out that these people read. Now, to go back to my first job in Citibank, okay? Now, there's this, I remember this story very well, though I didn't tell it in the book. There's a gentleman called Ade Ayemi. I remember so clearly now. We were working somewhere on over a weekend, and they brought everybody together. And I noticed that this man had a book. I remember it was a book called Managerial Economics. And I'm like, why is this guy reading? We are working. But he was reading, and today, Ade Ayemi is the global transaction head for the whole of Citibank Sub-Saharan Africa. He's top. So I'm not saying that reading made him who he is, but he was diligent, he was hardworking, he was extremely brilliant, but I think reading gave him an edge.
I'm curious. Do you think Nigerian leaders read enough? If you ask me that question, when I read the newspapers and I listen to Nigerian leaders on TV, with all due respect to the brilliant ones and so on, I get a general feeling that do they read? Do they learn from the best all over the world? Do they bring in global best practices into Nigeria? What's your take on that?
No. The short answer is no.
Is that why you hardly had Nigerian examples in your book?
Okay, I'll address that shortly. But to answer your first question, Barack Obama, when he went for the summer vacation in 2010, they said he went with 5 books. And in total, those books were 2,300 pages. That's about, I think, a 1-week vacation. And he read everything.
5 books.
5 books. Lee Kuan Yew, that we talk about today, the guy that made Singapore what it is today, he said that when he was as prime minister, he took out time to go to Harvard to, according to him, recharge his batteries. Even George Bush, that we look at and we think, oh, this guy doesn't look like a smart person, okay? You know, that he has always had that toga, on him. But if you read his book, Hard Decision Points, the way he read was I was in a reading contest with Karl Rove, one of his top aides, and they kept counting how many books. So so they wanted to see who will read more. Because sometimes what I hear is that, oh, I'm too busy. I don't have time. I have deadlines. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, but look at people who are reading. There are quite a number of examples that are Western in this book. That's a good observation. But I think the problem is that, personally, my reading habit is skewed towards non-fiction books, okay? I struggle sometimes with reading fiction because I like to read books that I can apply to myself. I've read books about how the brain works, about how to think, about how to approach issues. So those are things so I'm always going after, and I like reading certain authors. If you read Malcolm Gladwell, you read Jim Collins, you read, these are people who, Tom Friedman, these are people who use stories to tell whatever they want to share. So I love that. But so because the reason why you don't see so many Nigerian authors cited here is that, and I think it's a problem, Nigerians who do non-fiction tend to be people who are maybe politicians or they are living public office, like El Rufai's book and things like that. But I noticed that people who are in the private sector, they hardly write their story. You just mentioned Jack Welch of GE, Lou Gessner of IBM, Apple, Steve Jobs. These are people, when you read their book, you just say, wow, so this is what this guy did. I think I can do that. Yeah. They inspire you. Okay? So, but unfortunately, people leave banks, they leave big companies, even CBN governors, they hardly,
the Nigerian stories get lost, completely lost.
Therefore, you don't have a sense of history. Where did these people come from, and how can I take this vision further? So there's a gap there, and we need to fill it. Thank you very much for joining us on the Channels Book Club. Again, congratulations on your new book, How to Read More. Highly recommended. Thank you, Kule, for having me. Thank you. I recommend you get yourself a copy of How to Read More. It's a book you will enjoy reading. Don't forget you can join us on any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.